This is Middle East Matters on France 24 with me, Hala Mohideen. Coming up in today's programme, the World Health Organization says more than half of Yemen's health facilities have been destroyed. We'll take you to Sadaa, where little of the city remains intact. Turkey shrugs off international criticism of its purge. I'll be speaking with one Turkish journalist whose paper was closed as a result. And we meet the Saudi woman jailed for her cause, but still fighting for women's rights and freedoms. Well, we begin with an update on the fight against the Islamic State group. Iraqi and Kurdish forces have gained a small foothold in Mosul 4 weeks into the operation to retake the IS group's Iraqi stronghold. Meanwhile, US-backed Syrian arms groups have begun an offensive to retake the group's self-proclaimed capital of Raqqa. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said the SDF had captured a number of positions but had made no real progress. The World Health Organization says that more than 7,000 people have been killed and more than 21 million are in need of urgent medical assistance. The UN health body says that more than half the country's medical facilities have been destroyed, but the destruction goes further. This is the mosque in the northern city of Sadaa, and this is what the mosque looks like today. Lauren Berstecker has more on the city, which has been reduced to rubble.
Where century-old buildings once stood, today only rubble remains. The northern city of Sadaa has been one of the worst hit by Yemen's civil war. In the space of months, hundreds of years of architectural history were almost completely wiped out by Saudi and US-led airstrikes.
The aim of the assault is the complete destruction of the infrastructure. The first thing they hit was the economy. This is not a war against the Houthi or the Saudis. This market has nothing to do with the war or the Houthis.
Saudi Arabia declared Saada a war zone in May 2015. Its 50,000 residents were only given a few hours' notice before the first bombs started dropping from the sky. They've never stopped falling since. Coalition officials believe the city houses the largest number of Houthi leadership, training facilities and weapons in the country. Yet airstrikes have largely been indiscriminate, hitting military as well as civilian targets, such as markets and schools.
Over 200 schools were destroyed. There are no books, no chalkboards, and no desks left.
Severely lacking in basic infrastructure, the city is also missing qualified personnel, most of which fled during the first months of fighting.
A lot of patients come to see us, and we don't have any female maternity specialists, and some need C-sections, which we can't offer. And there are some cases which require the intervention of a specialist, which we don't have.
Most of the city's inhabitants have already left. Those who remain live in fear, hesitant to set foot outside, dreading the sound of approaching warplanes. Powerless, all they can do is stand by and observe the destruction of their city.
Well, to Turkey now, where President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has dismissed international criticism of the ongoing purge, saying he couldn't care less. The EU and US have voiced alarm after 9 people at the Cumhuriyet paper were detained, along with 13 pro-Kurdish politicians. Well, since the failed July 15th coup, some 35,000 people have been arrested in Turkey, with tens of thousands more sacked from the judiciary, the education sector, the civil service and the military. Well, for more on the situation in Turkey, I'm pleased to welcome on set Emre Demir, the former editor of Zaman France. Thank you so much for talking to us here on Middle East Matters. Now, you've wound down your publication, Zaman France, this summer. Yeah. Why was that?
Well, first of all, we were the French edition of Zaman newspaper in Turkey, which was the largest selling opposition newspaper in Turkey, and it had been seized in May by the government and then shut down after the coup attempt. So I have at least 40 friends, colleagues who are in prison right now. So the repression against the Zaman newspaper, which is linked to Gülen movement, is very obvious. And what happened to us, because we were a French newspaper, the reason we decided to shut down our edition, actually, it was related to threats against our journalists, but also our readership. So in Turkey, if you are a reader of Zaman, you are considered as a member of a terrorist organization. So it was a very highly risky move for us to continue to edit our French edition of Zaman. So we decided to stop.
For safety reasons. Now, you mentioned there this link between they're considered a terrorist movement. You've mentioned your link to the Fethullah Gülen movement. Fethullah Gülen, of course, in the States. He's blamed for this July 15th coup attempt. Is it fair to characterise the movement as a terrorist movement?
Of course not. But about the coup attempt, it is a possibility, and you have to make an investigation, a serious, transparent investigation about these allegations, because Gülen is the official scapegoat for Erdogan regime since 3 years right now. But this time, the allegation is serious. Of course, you can have Gülen's officers who played a role in the coup. We don't know yet. Actually, we don't know so much about the coup, who was the leader, who organized this coup, how did it happen. We don't know the essential information about the coup attempt. But the Gülen movement was the largest Islamic group in Turkey just 3 years ago, 4 years ago. I mean, the Gülen movement had at least 2 million members, sympathizers in Turkey. They had thousands of associations, schools, hospitals in Turkey. So the logic behind this crackdown on Gülen is just that every single member who participated to this movement, who worked in their institutions, are members of a terrorist organization. So this is why we see these huge numbers who have been fired from the state, who are in prison. So it is actually unfair because, to put it simple, there were 2,000, at least, at most 2,000 army officers who participated in the coup, and more than 30 police officers who helped them. After all, we have more than 100,000 people who have been fired from state, and more than 30,000 people who are in prison right now because of the coup attempt. It is ludicrous and unfair, actually.
Okay, so the implication being that this was started as a spat between President Erdogan and Fethullah Gülen, who were one-time allies. It seems to have gone beyond that. It seems they're no longer targeting Gülenists. We have Kurdish politicians who are now in the firing line. Why is this, and what happens next?
Well, to be clear, what is happening in Turkey is not a crackdown on Gülenists who went too far. It's not an irrational fear, irrational crackdown. It is actually a deliberate attempt to grab absolute power in Turkey. So Erdogan has a specific political agenda. He wants to change the constitution. He wants to have his presidential system. So he targeted actually 3 specific political groups. First, it was the Gülenists, and they have been eradicated in a way, repressive fashion. After the Kurds came, and there is actually an enormous repressive measures against the Kurdish political formation, Kurdish media, and also the pro-Western secular people are the new targets in Turkey. All have they in common that they want a Turkey who is still allied to the West. So Erdogan made an alliance with the nationalist groups, with ultra-Islamist groups, and they are targeting actually all the pro-Western groups in Turkey. It's not about Gülen and his movement anymore.
Okay, thank you for that. Emre Demir, the former editor of Zaman France, thank you so much for speaking with us here on France 24. And finally, she's a co-founder of an online liberal discussion group. She champions the rights for women to choose whether or not to wear the hijab. But as she's from Saudi Arabia, her efforts for liberating women landed her in jail back in 2014. Sadaa al-Shamari hasn't let this slow her down and is continuing to fight for women's rights and freedoms, as Sanam Shantier reports.
This is the face of a prominent human rights defender in Saudi Arabia. On her book cover, in line with her country's laws, nothing but her eyes are peeking out from a veil. But this is a more realistic picture, a sure sign of defiance. Here, Sadaa al-Shamari's hair's flowing freely. Now she's had to pay a price for her liberal views.
I was always told that if I managed to exercise patience, I would go to heaven. Okay, fine. In front of people, I'm strong, I'm a hero, but I wake up with my pillow wet from my tears. There can't be a God that accepts this pain and injustice, a God that says I'll be rewarded for this pain. So this is how my rebellious thinking started.
At home, the twice-divorced mother of 6 lets her hair down.
This is freedom. If you want to wear a tent, do the hijab like this or that. Or if you want to remove it completely and let your hair out, you should be free to do so.
But this hasn't always been the case. Saad was jailed for 3 months in 2014 for insulting Islam. This after she co-founded an online group with Saudi blogger Raif Badawi, who's now serving a 10-year prison sentence.
I didn't go through Raif's Badawi case until she was arrested. And it was so scary. I was like, really? 10 years? And Mom set up the network with them. So it was numbing.
While she's no longer behind bars, Saad's wings are still clipped. The 42-year-old is disowned by her own relatives and barred from travelling abroad. But she's used to taking on Saudi Arabia's legal system. Her travail started the day her daughter was taken from her, in a country where the father is automatically granted a child's custody. Today, she says it was worth the pain, as her movement has started to gain momentum.
Society's now saying that liberals aren't disbelievers. They don't sow strife and don't cause rebellion. But whether you like it or not, you're fighting your own fight.
Since her release, Saad's had to sign a pledge to reduce her activism. But today, from a small corner, she continues to fight for women, one tweet at a time.
And that's it from Middle East Matters this week. Stay with us on France 24. Lots more still to come.